Hey, welcome back to Pizza Talk. I'm Peter Reinhardt, and I'm back with our Detroit pizza gurus, Jeff Smokovich he's coming to us from Denver, and Sean Randazzo from Detroit, Detroit-style pizza. And last time we were together, Jeff walked us through his process for how he makes the brown dog style and the blue pan pizzas, in the Rocky Mountain area. Sean, you're here at the sort of the mother house of Detroit style. You're in Detroit. Uh, you're going to show us how you do it there, and also maybe we'll get to learn a little bit more about some of the other products that you sell besides pizza. How you help people in the Detroit style community equip up for doing what they're doing around the country. But what do you got for us today?
What was that, Peter? Sorry.
I was just saying, what do you have? What are you going to make for us today?
Well, what we have is a margarita in the D. It's our spin on a margarita pizza, Detroit style, and it's topped with fresh basil, sliced tomatoes, red onions, fresh garlic, and sea salt, and obviously our sauce.
So it's a Detroit style pizza, but it's a margarita pizza, but in the Detroit style mode.
Absolutely. Yep, our spin of it.
Cool. Well, let's have it.
It's a very popular vegetarian option here, but we'll start with the beginning. I mean, I know we went into the history of this style last episode, but the real quick breakdown on this style of pizza, it was introduced in 1946 back at Six and Conant by a gentleman named Gus Guerra at Buddy's Rendezvous. The story behind that is shortly after World War II, people started coming back from the war, bringing European taste. Bars started adding fish and chips, pizza, and things like that. Gus wanted to do something a little bit different at his place. And we're in the Motor City here, so a lot of auto shop workers would come in and frequent his place. At the time, it was a blind pig during Prohibition. There's a couple guys, the story's told, that came in from the shop one day, and they seen Gus playing around with his wife's grandmother's Sicilian dough recipe, which this dough is a descendant of a Sicilian dough. And these auto shop guys said, hey, we use these little square pans in the auto shop. Why don't we bring some in? Long story short, he pressed out the dough, put pepperoni on the dough, cheese, sauce. 1946, put it in the oven. Detroit style pizza was born. And I won't go into all the originals, but with that said, it kind of spun out to 4 originals, and that would be Buddy's. Gus eventually sold Buddy's, went to East Detroit, opened Cloverleaf. Between that, Louis was working with Gus at Buddy's, and went to Shields and worked there for a while before some things happened, and then he went and opened Louis, and then you have Shields. So basically it's, Buddy's, Cloverleaf, Louis, and Shields are the originals. And when we're talking about everything I'm doing today, just like Tony G, respecting the craft, we're going to stick to authenticity. That's what we do here. And
Right.
There's lots of creative options with this style. It lends itself as an amazing culinary palette. But we're going to stick to the script here and go over the things that make this style authentic and other things like that. So,
okay. Sean, before you start, so we're going to mention Jeff. You're going to jump in whenever you have some questions, since you have your own take on it, and you're from Detroit as well, so you're connected to that origin. But you've kind of, as you moved away from the area, added your own spin. So I know you're going to have some questions for Sean. So feel free to just throw them in whenever you have them. And Sean, before you get going, can you just say one more thing about that steel pan, that blue steel pan that you've got? How did Gus know that pan was going to work for pizza? I mean, those pans were used to hold nuts and bolts in the auto shops, right?
Yeah. To answer that question, I don't know how he knew it would work, but he obviously made it work. And since then, this pan here made of steel, seasoned. A bare version is like this. Real quick history on the pan, but first I did want to say I love your shirt, Jeff. It's awesome. And then with Jeff, when we get into the other things that he does different, there's reasons for his rhymes behind his reason too, and we'll go in a little deep on that when we get to those points. But the pan, originally was made at Dover Parkersburg, I think was the company in West Virginia. Originally made them. They supplied auto shops, oil change plate, whatever. A lot of different places use these. I even have some people in the scientific field and labs and chemicals and stuff. They use these pans for certain things. But But the pan's been used since 1946. It's made of steel. It went until about, I want to say, I'm not 100% exactly, but maybe 2009, 2010. Dover Parkersburg or Parker's Doverberg, it's one of the two, but they sold their pan division to Beer Hens, a garbage can maker, and they moved production to Mexico. During that period, there was about a year where there was no steel pans. It was in the Free Press, Detroit News, Detroit-style pizza makers scrambled to find pizza pans. So during that time, we have already, established supplying pizzerias and people we trained with pans. So, we too were in a crunch, and we actually, at the time, were opening another location. So we were in desperate need of pans, and everyone was. So we kind of first went to try to make our own pan and got quotes and all this. And then me and a local vendor, Roselli's, were about to buy all the equipment from Mexico. But when they were being produced in Mexico, the reason why they stopped, they used thinner steel. The pans were garbage. They still have thousands in warehouse that the season wasn't sticking to. Long story short, that production stopped again. And that's when, luckily, before then, I started reaching out to other companies like Lloyd's, Allied Metal, Chicago, all these different pan companies. And Lloyd's, when there was the void, it really showed an interest and already had something going. So, I worked with them for a while until we got back to our steel pans. Kind of fast forward, so I'm not spending so much time on this. Currently, we're having these pans made here in Michigan. We have an amazing seasoning process that really has solved some issues with the old pans. Like this Bear pan here, as you can see, it's super shiny and silver. Yeah, it's coated in mineral oil to protect it from oxidizing, like right now. But, you have to wash it, and you have such a very limited time to dry it off because all the oil's off it, and it will oxidize or rust because it's bare steel. So, you got to dry it and then season it very quick. We don't really recommend this for people that don't really know what they're doing, but it is pretty simple. You just basically clean it off, put a very thin coat of canola, vegetable oil, corn oil on it. We recommend canola, and you bake the oil on there multiple times to create a coating and a release. And with that said, we do have the seasoned version as well, which has a little bit more rough surface, which this one, you season it and don't put enough coats on, and it comes in contact with water, you lose season very, very fast. Right. We're not seeing any of this, and we launched these in August with this new pan, so it's awesome. No flaking, no chipping of seasoning, which was a huge, downfall. No one wants a black piece of thing in their dough. So
if our viewers who are watching want to get a hold of pans like that, can they write to you and get them directly from you?
Yeah, DetroitStylePizza.com is where we have all of our products, our mixes, our pans, and all of our services and all that. So that's the pan.
Thank you.
We're gonna start from the bottom up, basically. So we're starting with the pan, oiling the pan. Once you have a pan, the first time you ever use one of our seasoned pans, you're gonna want to oil it pretty heavily the first time. And you may get a first initial stick around by the cheese. You get it out one time good, and then get any debris out of the pan, re-oil it, do it. You are just you're good to go. Every time it'll just continue getting better. And as with each use, just like fine wine, these continue to improve. So they slide right out. But we're gonna start with the dough. When it comes to the dough, we actually, what we're using here and what we use at our pizzerias, and we're actually at our pizzeria in St. Clair Shores, Detroit-style pizza.
We're having a little Zoom glitch there.
It's our commercial dough mixes here at our third concept, Palazzo de Pizza. But what consists of the dough is basically, we got two different types of flour. We use a patent baker's flour, which is one of the purest parts of the flour kernel, the inner part of the kernel, and baker's patent flour. And then we also use a small percentage of semolina. We use a little sugar, a little salt, and we use instant dry yeast instead of active dry yeast. With that said, I do have some dough balls here that were made yesterday. I'm going to touch on how we use fresh dough and kind of the fork in the road with your options to ferment the dough. First, like I said in the beginning, I'm sticking to authenticity. None of the original places, do cold fermentation, this, that. When I train people, there's several forks in the road I do like to cover, like the 24, 40 hour cold fermentation, or also, we talk about par bake or using fresh dough. So with the dough here in our concepts, we use fresh dough. So we make it every morning. We portion it out, we press it. I got some dough balls here I'll talk about and portion out in a second and talk about that. But Basically, when we mix it, I'll talk about mixing for a minute. We do it in different mixers. So if you're using a planetary mixer, basically it's 1 minute. You get all the ingredients gathered together. Then we move it up to 2, and then it's anywhere about like 3 minutes just to kind of get what we call an octopus head going. It's kind of just a ball that forms. The hydration level of it is 70%. Well, our mix is actually 71% hydrated based on the instructions. With the style of pizza, and I am going to stop on the dough real quick just to cover like what we kind of talk about 5 characteristics of an authentic Detroit-style pizza. One being the dough being 70% hydrated or more. So what that does for the dough is it creates that really airy, soft, gassy inside, but yet a super crunchy outside because the water content of it. And in baker's percentages, it's the weight of the flour versus everything else. So 70% or higher on the water content is what's usually typically done with the style of pizza. So mixing the dough, I'm jumping all over, but we went through second phase on a planetary mixer. On the third, really what you're looking for in any mixer on the third, and it could be on a planetary, it could be another 4 or 5 minutes, and we actually like to whip it pretty good. So we put it on speed 3 on like a Hobart. And then what you're looking for is, after 4 minutes or something, stop it. You're obviously looking for it to clean up the bowl, come into a ball, even though it's super wet and sticky, it still should do that. Then, once it does that and you start hearing some slapping of the bowl if you're walking away, that's a good time to check it. And, I'm talking about commercial here, but I also want to touch on residential. Same thing with a little KitchenAid mixer or something. These kind of apply. You're going to do 1 minute to get it together, 2 for a little bit. Depending on your mixer, you may just want to keep it on 2 for a while and not go any higher, or not 2, but a medium speed or something that's going super high. But the final product, the dough, it's done. A few things. Number one, it should still have kind of like a color to it, not pale white. It should have a little khaki color to it. If it's really pale, what I've noticed is, something went wrong. It could be too hot of water. It could be too much water, whatever else. And usually on the second phase of mixing, we look at those things. If it doesn't get an octopus head and it's leveled out and just is not coming together at all, 3 things we look at. Number one, if anything's stuck to the bottom, we like to put the water in first just to kind of prevent anything from kind of sticking. And then second would be obviously maybe your thermometer wasn't calibrated right and maybe the water was super hot and it just, it got things too hot, so it's leveling out because the warmth isn't, because the colder it is, the more it'll pull together. And then too much water or something else could have went wrong. But those are the things you look at. So what you're looking for in the final product is being able to pull the dough up out of the mixing bowl in about 6 to 8, maybe even 10, even 12 inches. Wiggle it back and forth without it breaking for elasticity. That's telling you that the gluten structure in the dough has formed enough to where, it's not going to be flat. And what this does, obviously, is it's going to hold in that gas that forms a lot better with that gluten structure tight and that elasticity. If you have dough, like what I notice a lot of people email, that are beginners at this, with our residential mixes and stuff at home, I get emails saying that, it never really pulled together like the video. It's super sticky, hard to work with. And 9 times out of 10, it's just a matter of mixing it a little bit longer. Or if you do mix it a little longer and it's still not pulling together, maybe there's a little too much water or whatever. Just throw a little bit more flour in there, and then you'll see it start pulling together at home. So that's that.
You can fix it. If it's not working right, you can still fix it. Don't give up on it.
Absolutely. I think when people start putting their hands in it and it sticks to their hands and it's all over the place, they're like, it's all wrong. But I would recommend just get it off your hands, put some oil on your hands. Another good tip would be take that dough, if it's not a whole bunch, or even if you're doing dough balls, and fold it in your hand with the oil a little bit. Even though it may be a little loose, it's going to start getting, you're just basically kneading it and building that gluten structure.
Gotcha.
So, going back to mixing with the water temp, we do use instant dry yeast. We do recommend, and it does fluctuate from winter to summer and humidity. Making dough here and going to Jeff and making dough, it's going to be a complete different animal. I've been up in Denver and I've worked with people and a whole different ball game. Not only with humidity, but the elevation and all that. So the point I'm getting at is, you can't have a perfect, especially in a commercial setting. Home's a little bit more manageable, but like, for example, in winter, we temp our water at 95 degrees because it's a little cooler and drier in here. And we want to get that yeast activating to some point so that we can get some rising going and not waiting forever. And then in the summer, If it's really, hot, we obviously, based on our proofing, managing the proofing process and everything, we might take the temperature of the water down to even like 80 degrees. So, there could be a 10, 15 degree fluctuation there.
Sure.
So once we get the dough mixed and done, what we do is, and I'll kind of touch on residential and commercial kind of really quick, but for commercial, we use bus tubs. We put 20 pounds in each bus tub of oil. We have a bus tub with about 4 ounces of oil in it, and we do not put oil in our recipe. If you didn't catch that, and we fold the oil, we let it rest for a little bit so it relaxes because it's kind of really tight after mixing. And another thing to mention too, on the third phase, I am just trying to give whatever I can here, but on the third phase of mixing the dough, if it doesn't seem to be pulling all together really good, another little tip would be to just let it rest for about 10 minutes in the bowl on auto release and just, kind of let everything sit. Put it back on, you'll notice everything will start collecting and forming together a lot better.
Right.
So that's that. Once we get the dough done, we move it into, like I said, oil bus tubs. We let it rest. If I was at home, I would just form it into a dough ball. I have some dough balls here, are 8 by 10. We do a 9.5 to 10 ounces in our 8 by 10 pans. We do 17.5 to 18 ounces in our 10 by 14 pans. Wow. So once the dough is resting in the oil bus tub for about 10, 15 minutes, we go and we basically fold that big batch of dough into the oil. I tell my people, try to do it about 12 times at least. It's just a bulk portion of kneading the dough and working the oil in there. And then we let it rest another 15 minutes before portioning at our dough station. So, and then residential, basically we just take the dough balls, portion them, if we're using them the same day, we'll just put some oil on them. We'll have them out at room temperature till we're, let them rest a little bit before we're ready to portion them in the pan. If we're going to, make a few of them at home, you can ball them up. You can put them in the fridge for a 24, 48-hour cold fermentation. You can freeze them. The only thing I'm going to mention is once you put any dough in the cooler or freezer, just keep in mind that when you pull it out, it is going to take a lot longer for it to even get to room temperature, right, which is where we start with fresh dough. Gotcha. So yeah, and since we're talking about that, an optimal time frame from the time you have portioned your pizza your dough in the pan, fully pressed it out, it's proofing from that point where it's fully pressed out to when it's about a third way up the pan and ready to use or put away. Ideally, you're looking at an hour and a half. Now, that's like the standard to look at when you're trying to figure out how to manage your temps and, everything else that you got going on with managing your proofing process. So with that said, once the dough is in the bulk, we bring it to our table, we start portioning it in pans, and, I'll talk about dough balls we have here. So we use fresh dough. So we go straight in that tub, we start dropping it in the pans, and then we give it 5 presses. We go through the whole batch, which, right now we got probably 150 pans here. We got Joe right behind the computer here pressing out, our partner Joe Mano, and he's going to press them all out fully and then put a top on them. They're going to sit there every 15 minutes, half hour. We're going to check it. We're really looking for it to rise about a third way up the pan. In the past, we used to say halfway up the pan. But once we were working with people, they call and say they're going out and stuff because you cover them, you put them in the cooler, they're still going to rise in a big stack because that heat's trapped in there. So we kind of just recommend the third way up the pan. Once they're a third way up the pan, at that point, you're able to, in a commercial setting, we leave some out and based on volume, the rest we put in the cooler and just take them out to get to room temperature based on volume of, business. And at home, if we were to go ahead and start making it, we would obviously just press it out in the pan, let it sit. In a house, I'm going to tell you, an hour and a half is hard to accomplish to get a third way up the pan, unless you can find a really warm spot in your house. Right. What I like to do, especially when I got the oven preheating, is putting the pans of dough that I'm using kind of by the oven because it's got some heat coming off of it. But still, you're looking for about a third way up the pan. At that point, you're ready to start making the pizza. So, I got some pans here. I'm just going to go ahead and
show you how you do it. Yeah.
But, nice one. All right, we got action. So The pan here, they've already been oiled.
Yeah.
You can tell, super, super thin coat. There's no excess oil in here. We really, if we had more oil, it'd be hard to press out. It'd keep sliding. There's really no reason for it. It comes out super nice and crispy. So an important thing with the dough, like, especially I see people when they come training or take our classes, they have this instinct to when they grab a dough ball, they want to just start playing with it or re-dough balling it up. When we take this, like, I want to be as fragile as possible. This has already been out for, like, honestly, about an hour and a half, our dough balls. Before I go on that, these dough balls, we use fresh dough. We do make about a dozen small and large dough balls. We use them for backup. So for us, if it's in the middle of a rush and we check our levels of pizza and we're running low because we had a couple of huge orders, Joe might tell Ryan to go grab the dough balls and start dropping them because it's going to take an hour and a half before they're even ready, close to ready. So, and also if we almost run out of dough today, we'll have some dough balls to throw in pans right away to get them going right first thing in the morning. That's where I do it. Now, when people, I keep mentioning.
John, let me jump in here for a second. What I'd like to do is take a break here because we're at a place now where you're ready to start panning up these dough balls. We're going to need to take a break and come back for another segment so we can take it the rest of the way home.
Okay.
If that's okay with you. And while we're doing, let me just, while we're in this break, just let me send out a little shout out and thanks to some of the companies that have underwritten and sponsored Pizza Talk that allows us to do these shows. Forno Bravo Ovens and the Napoli Tomatoes. Both of you guys have been great supporters. So I want to thank you for being a part of this and helping bring these stories to everybody that's watching. And for those of you who are watching, come back for the next segment. And Sean's going to take us all the way home on how to go from dough ball to finished Detroit-style pizza. And we're here with Sean. We're here with Jeff. We'll see you on the next segment on Pizza Talk.
Okay.
Welcome back to Pizza Talk, and I'm with Jeff Smokovich and Sean Randazzo, the two basically the world champion Detroit-style pizza guys. These are the creme de la creme of this style, and it's also, by the way, right now my current favorite style of all pizzas. So I'm very excited about these episodes we've been doing together with you guys. Jeff, we've been watching Sean talk about his method and the dough that he makes, the 70% hydration, and we talked a little bit about pans and everything else. And obviously you came out of that same, sort of community. Do you have any thoughts about some of the things you saw that Sean was doing and how it impacted what you do?
Yeah, I knew a little bit about how Sean did it, but it's really fascinating to me how polar opposite the two methods that we have that we do, and then the end game is the pizza looks very similar in the end. So it's really cool to see how Sean's doing it and then compare it to how I do it. And I've had Sean's pizza numerous times in the past, and it's delicious. I love it. So going back to the pan thing too, Sean uses that style pan. I use a different kind of pan. However, like, I get questions all the time from people, well, I don't have a Detroit style pan. Can we just use any pan that we have in our house just to mess around with Detroit style pizza or a different oven or a different dough method and see how it comes out? And, there's all these different ways that you can do Detroit style. And I don't think anyone really does it exactly the same. And we all come out with a great pizza in the end, which is really cool. So,
which is a testament to the power of pizza to rise above all of our individual quirks to give us something great no matter how you kind of approach it.
Yeah, and one thing that I'm most jealous about that Sean has that he's able to do in Michigan and Detroit is the temperature there. Because in Denver, it is so dry here. In Telluride, it's even drier, the altitude. And then, when I go in Detroit-style pizzerias in Detroit and they have that, it's not always awesome when you're outside in the middle of the summer and you have the humidity. But when you're making pizzas and you get to have that humidity and you don't have to cover, like, we have to instantly cover everything, the dough, as soon as it comes out of the mixer, or as soon as you push it, you got to put the lid on it right away. Otherwise, it gets a skin right on top. But when I go in Detroit-style pizzerias, I'll see their pans. The neighborhood one that I grew up, they have their pans stacked on top of the oven with no lids on them all day long. So
it makes you
I
jealous.
would love to somehow insert humidity into the restaurants in Denver that I have.
It's kind of nice when we can say something positive about humidity.
Yeah.
All right. Well, this is great. And Jeff, feel free to jump in as Sean, takes us kind of through the rest of the process. My one comment was the difference between how much oil and how little oil Sean puts into his pans versus how much I put into my pans. And I always thought having a lot of oil on the bottom was kind of one of the secrets and the keys. But Sean, why don't you take it from here and tell us a little bit about where you go from this lightly oiled pan and then how you start to pan the dough up.
Sure thing. And Jeff, had some
We're having a
there,
little
and
bit
it goes
of a
to
technical
what I
issue.
said. It depends where you are. There's so many different variables. So like for example, for us in the winter, we're definitely covering our dough in the dead heat of the summer, especially if we got 200 plus pans going. We may leave them unlidded just because we have enough humidity in the air. Not enough humidity, dry, you get a skin. I mean, there's just so much. But going back to pressing out this dough, we don't have too much time. So I'm going to throw a pizza in the oven right now so that it's ready before we're done, and then I'll come right back here.
Beautiful. We'll work it backwards. Yeah.
Sean, I have one question right off the bat. When you're putting the pizza in, what the toppings that you have on it, and then the cheese, how delicate do you need to be because of the raw dough when you're putting the cheese and toppings on, not to have it too heavy or deflate it, or how do you train your guys and yourself to be delicate with that?
That is a great question, and it is something that we have to be very careful of. So especially when our dough is fully proofed out here and not put back in the cooler and taken out. Once we put it in the cooler and take it out, before it gets to room temperature, it obviously is more solid and it's not as weak. But if we took it right from the stack after being a third way up the pan or further, brought it to the make line, number one, when we cheese it, we definitely don't just dump it on because it'll collapse. Just like where I'm about to talk, when I'm pressing this out, we want to be as very fragile with the dough as possible. We don't want to drop the pan. So we just are very light-handed with topping, Jeff, and build it, so that we're not putting pressure on the dough, especially when it's fresh like that. But normally, most of our business is at 5 to 8, and they have been in the cooler a little bit. We're able to take them out, and they still have some firmness to them. But going right into the dough here, we have a 17.5-ounce dough ball. You can tell it's very, light, it's not super dense. And I'm not balling it back up. A lot of people have a tendency, they want to start working the dough.
Yeah.
You want it as gradual as possible. What I recommend is just grabbing it like a triangle, using your 4 fingers, and place it into the pan like so, like that. And then from this point, 1, 2, 3, 4 presses, up to 6 presses, you're done. Go ahead and, any more time spent on pressing it out at that point, not only are you wasting time because it's still a little tight, you gotta be pulling back, but you're also working whatever gas has already been in the dough out of the dough. So you're kind of defeating the whole process of it resting and then proofing it. So my whole theory with pressing out the dough is you want to do it with the least amount of touches as possible. If 20 hand presses gets it to where it needs to be, you're great. If it takes 30, 40, you need to work on that. We always let people leave our classes and our training with the standard of a minute per pound hands-on. So if they go back and it's taking them 2 hours to do 60 pounds of dough hands-on only, well then we know that more than likely 9 times out of 10, they're pressing it out too much. And they're also working the dough too much. So that's a side note. I'm gonna go ahead and just drop these other 2 in here. It's another large. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 presses, and then for our small 8x10s, it's 9.5, 10 ounces. And same thing, we're not being very light with the dough. 3 presses there, cover them.
Sean, are you always using the dough balls, or do you use you said you go out of the bus tub too? Do you cut it and just throw it right into the pan, or do you always ball it up first?
Nope, we cut it, portion it into the pan, and then when we're done with all that, we usually have about 12 dough balls of each of dough left. We ball them up, and with that said, we put them in the cooler. We use them for backup. When we do train people, we do use those to give them an idea what the 24-hour cold fermentation is. I know you do bulk. For me, I always tell people if you're doing that, I don't know if you remix the bulk thing, but I find it if you make dough balls, they just are more consistent and more uniform. Where if you have bulk, that inner part's gonna be super hot, and it's gonna really start expanding. And if you start grabbing from the outside, it's gonna be a whole different dough than the center. But we do go through training and make them side by side. Like, there is such a slight difference, but you will get more flavor, a little better aroma, a little drier, a little lighter, I should say, on 24, 48 hour, dough ball. But, a lot of people are coming in for commercial training, and they look at, is this pizza worth or any different enough to add that whole extra process or step into the picture? And,
right.
Not so many have done that, but that's that. So we're making a margarita here, and I'm going to go ahead and make this. A couple things really quick about the toppings and cheese blend. Cheese blend I'll talk about really quick. Brick cheese has been used in the blend, or even Buddies, I think, used straight brick for a while. The different cheeses you use in your blend are going to make, all the difference. The color of your caramelized crown, if you use straight mozzarella or like a mozzarella and just provolone, you're going to get a flat crust around it, like brownish. One of my favorite blends that I ran into, traveling and just working with different blends and getting people set up is like a 25% brick, 25% Monterey Jack, and 50% low moisture mozzarella. The low moisture mozzarella, if you use whole milk or something like that, it's just loose. The other two cheeses, like the brick, it's a softer cheese. It melts a little more creamier. It has a buttery kind of flavor to it. And I don't know if maybe, some people even came to Detroit at one point and, tasted that butter and the cheese. And they're like, oh man, they must put butter in the pan. But,
exactly.
And all that stuff. But, the cheese blend is important. Another thing is the shred. I'm a big fan of a very thick shred. You go too thin, it dries out on the pizza. Too quick, you don't get that nice cheese pull. Not only that, you use cube or a little cube. I like the way this large shredded cheese sticks to the pan, steel pans, and creates a really jagged, edged, authentic looking crown on the pizza. Where sometimes with cubes, it's a little bit more straight. But that's the cheese.
Sean, what's your opinion on the diced cheese that you see? I've seen a lot of Detroit-style pizzerias in Detroit. They'll use diced for some reason. I've tried it out. Not a huge fan of it, but
like I was gonna say, Louis, I know uses cube cheese, and back to what I said. It's just, I think, looking at their crust line, you'll see that it's more like, it's just a straight line rather than you see some nice Instagram pictures of a really, really cool jagged crown on these pizzas. And I think that is really, really awesome and adds to the pizza. But yeah, my opinion is I'm not a fan of it. I'm a fan of thick shredded cheese. And with this whole pizza, the dough, the cheese, the toppings. Let me go check on the pizza in the oven really quick.
Yeah. Well, he's checking on that. You didn't mention anything about Parmesan in that blend, did you?
Nope. Just for ours, what we do is we do actually just a brick and low moisture mozzarella, just the two cheeses in ours. And I was talking about cheese. Oh yeah, consistently even. So the style of pizza, the theory is everything's consistently even in the pan. The dough, you want consistently even. You're not working it up the edge. The cheese, you want it consistently even. But when I do that, I do want some of the shreds, on the edge of the pan, so we get a nice caramelized crown. Toppings too, consistently even. You don't want, vegetables thrown against the edge. But I notice when I start telling people that avoid the edge even a half inch, then everything's in the middle. So
yeah, right.
I look at a pizza as art, and I take care of making them. So I look at the pizza on how it's going to be cut, slices, and I kind of place my toppings like that. But with all that said, I am going to grab a pan that I had pressed out earlier here, and this was it actually did pop up pretty good.
Beautiful, yeah.
Ball, so I didn't think it would get to where it needed to go. But you can see it's about a third, halfway up the pan, which is perfect. So what we would do here is from this point we put a little dry oregano directly on the dough. So I'm going to
sprinkle this. That's a nice trick. Yeah.
And then for cheese, 8 by 10 small, we use 6 ounces of cheese. For a large, we use 12. And like I said, if I was to just like dump this in the middle like this whole center would collapse. when the pizza bakes and comes out, obviously there's going to be no structure in the middle. It's going to be flat because it's glass. So what I like to kind of do is just put a little bit in the middle first, just slightly spread it, and then I'm going to go ahead and go all the way around.
Sean, what percentage are you getting around the edges compared to the center for the cheese? About?
Really, it's just consistently even.
Pretty
So,
even.
Yeah, once I get all the cheese on there, I just kind of fan it out. And like if I was to look at it, like I really don't put it up against the sides or anything. I mean, obviously you got some little strings that are already there. But once again, it's just consistently even. It's kind of what I do. Once again, I'm going to check on this pizza. I'm right back.
All right.
So
Now we're multitasking. We got pizza baking. We got a pizza making.
Yeah, one of the things about baking these pizzas, especially in commercial ovens like these deck ovens, which have traditionally been used to bake Detroit-style pizzas, there's hot spots, this, that, so you need someone with some kind of skill on them. And like right now, I'm going to turn it around. We're really busy. We don't turn every pizza around, but it's got probably another few minutes, but I'm just going to give it a little tour.
Okay.
What are those? What kind of ovens are you using there, Sean? They look like they look beautiful and antique ovens.
Yeah.
Like an old baker's pride or something.
They are actually 981 Blodgetts, and these
Blodgetts,
yeah.
actually came from the original Cloverleaf and are well older than me. And the other ones we picked up in Rhode Island years ago. But yes, very old ovens, but they're like old cars. There's 3 things that can go wrong, and they make the most amazing Detroit-style pizza. On the ovens, real quick, we've tried so many different conveyor ovens. Right now, we're still working with Hot Rocks to get everything where I'd like to see it. But it's been a challenge to find any conveyor ovens that get where a deck oven will get.
Yeah.
Are using them, and there's these tips and tricks you can use, but traditionally deck ovens have been used for this style of pizza. We got some nice fresh basil here, so this margarita and the tea. We do put the basil on before we bake it. A lot of the fresh stuff like arugula, things like that, we like to put on after post bake. I'm a big fan of that. But with this pizza, it bakes really well. We just make sure we put it on first so the other toppings sit on.
So being a classic margarita here, it's got to have basil and it's got to have tomatoes and cheese. Basically, those 3 things are all you really need for it to be a margarita. And then everything else is sort of a plus and a bonus.
Absolutely. So yeah, that pizza should be coming out in just a minute here. We bake at 525 to 550 in the ovens. And, a cheese pizza, pepperoni pizza, you might be looking at 8 or 9 minutes. And deluxe or multi-toppings, you're looking at 15, maybe 16, 17 minutes tops.
It's so interesting that for this margarita, instead of using sauce, you're using fresh tomatoes.
Yes, when it does come out, I will also add our sauce to it.
After it comes out, yeah. So are these plum tomatoes that you're using?
These are just Roma tomatoes here. We have different tomatoes in here, but just these right here that we use for our pizzas are the Roma. Little red onion.
Little onion.
My time is perfect just to finish this, to pull that other one out here. And then we do put a little fresh garlic, minced garlic on here.
Nice.
All right. And this right here then goes in the oven like the one we have coming out.
Beautiful.
And I will be pulling that out right now.
So now we see what it looks like going in, and we're about to see what it looks like coming out and the transformation that takes place as a result of the oven.
Sean, what's the temperature that you're running your ovens at for that kind of bake?
So 525 is what we're kind of honed in at, but like in back, it's one corner it's 575, etc. But 525
is the same. And what about Jeff? What do you set yours at?
For our final bake, we're at 600, and at one location we're using an electric, so it's even hotter with an electric at the top and bottom heat. The other location is a gas deck baker's fry.
But you do a double bake, right? You par bake the dough first at a different temperature, like what, 450 or something like that?
Lower for the par bake, 450, higher
600.
Wow, that looks awesome, Sean.
Beautiful pizza. Oh boy, yeah, what a change, huh? Yeah, so you got that beautiful caramelization on the cheese.
And this right out of the pan.
Yeah.
Another.
And even though you didn't really emphasize the rim, the perimeter, you got a nice meltdown on the side and a little Frico edge without having to do any kind of special, prep for that.
So hopefully you guys can hear the crunch on this bad boy.
Love it. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
You can hear it from there, but it had a really nice crunch. At this point, and you notice that we cut the pizza before we sauce it. The reason, some people do racing stripes, this, that. The reason why we cut it before saucing it is deliver, carry out is our main business. So you got sauce that falls in the cracks and it's sitting in the box for 15 minutes. Could create some, crust issues on the bottom. So with that, we're gonna go ahead and sauce this.
All right.
Not done yet, almost.
This sauce is that sauce you keep warm. You keep it in a warmer. It's not cold sauce, right?
Exactly. It's we have it on the countertop in the warmer. We post sauce all of our pizzas. It's a world of a difference from putting it on before bake. The pizza cooks way more consistently without all that moisture in the oven. And also, the big thing for me, and the reason why we really went this route years ago, was the taste pop completely different. Like if I was to bake this and pull it out, it seems like more like one taste. Like with this, I take a bite, I can taste the awesome sauce flavors. I can taste the different ingredients more independently. Yeah. And for me, that was a game changer that I said, we need to go to and test this with everyone. And hands down, everyone agreed that it was a way better product. So with that said, I'm going to ask if some of the people here, like my partner Joe, my daughter Harmony, and my wife Carrie, can come and maybe try a piece of this.
Yeah, try it. We'll vicariously enjoy it with you through the screen, but they can enjoy it on our behalf. But also, when they hold up the slices, hey guys, if you could show us like the undercrust too a little bit, so everyone could see kind of all aspects of the pizza.
So we actually put sea salt on top as well on this pizza. So
just bring everything out, yeah.
We got the pizza. I don't know if that's a good view, but
that's a great view. Yeah, pretty awesome. Yeah.
Sean, the best part for me so far is that you have your whole family working in the pizzeria.
We'll let my wife take the first piece. Go for it, and they're gonna always grab the corner. Just so you know.
I always go for that corner too.
I was actually joking yesterday that we should cut the largest and just more pieces too.
Right.
All right, let's do a pizza cheers and we call this.
I know everyone always likes to see that, but
we love to see the undercrust.
Yeah.
Because that's where that crunch comes from.
Here, I'll give you a underskirt real quick.
Yeah, sweet. Yeah. So just browning up. Yeah. Wow. Well, how's it taste, guys?
It must be really good. Nobody's talking. Yeah.
But clearly not their first time around a Detroit-style pizza. That's for sure. But you guys have been making these for a long time in your family. Do you ever get tired of it? Do the family members ever get tired and say, "No more pizza, Dad"?
No, it's actually getting a lot more fun. A lot more fun because we're making more at home with all this pandemic thing. It's like now my son, he's 9, and I'm getting him to get involved and cutting his own pizza at home and making his own, and I can see him taking pride in it. So it's really, really cool. And so to answer your question, no, I mean, for me personally, because of what I have going on with my health, I don't do many carbs at all. I do take a bite randomly here and there if I'm training, especially, and need to. So I'm missing out, but we're definitely eating more pizza than ever before.
Well, Sean, thank you so much and this is really has been a master class. We've had some little technical glitches with the Zoom things. So if those of you who are watching, if you wanted to, fortunately, you can go back and replay certain parts to make sure you get all those steps, because there was an incredible amount of information given in these 2 segments, and we really appreciate it. Is there a slice left that you could hold up as we go out, as we kind of fade out today? If you could hold up with one of those slices real close, I want to get maybe a side view so we can see a little bit of the structure too.
Sure thing. Let me cut one open here.
The cheese is so melty, it's kind of hard to see.
Yeah. Give a piece of cut here.
Oh yeah. There it is.
Okay, so I don't know how this is gonna work, but let me split this one down.
Beautiful.
And I'm not sure. Actually, let me rip it. And this was a dough ball that I had out that if I left out a little bit longer, we'd get more, and there's not a whole lot.
Yeah, but you can see it's starting to really wanting to open up. Yeah, and I'm sure it's just like butter when you bite into it. What I love about this Detroit style, and this is true with with the Sicilian and the focaccia style pan pizzas, is you get those textures. You get the crunchy undercrust, you get the great crispy sides, and then you get the creamy buttery crumb of the dough. And then on top of all that, you get cheese and sauce and all the other bonus, ingredients.
Oh, yeah.
But it really starts with that dough. Hey, would love to say hello to your wife. Would you mind introducing her to us?
Yes, this is my lovely wife, Carrie. She is a huge part of
Hey, Carrie.
She does a lot of our prep, our dough, and
Hi.
Great to see you. Again, I want to thank both of you and the whole family and the whole group, your partners, everybody, for allowing us to come into your pizzeria to show us your method, your technique, sharing all this, because as we know, this style is sweeping the country. Jeff in Denver, Sean in Detroit, and then everybody the outposts out there that are all sort of adding, I would say, momentum to this snowballing effect of Detroit-style pizza. For 60 years, it was like this great secret that only Detroit seemed to know about. They didn't even call it Detroit pizza, you called it pizza. And then now everybody wants it. So now we know how to do it. So guys, thank you so much for spending as much time as you have with us on Pizza Talk. Thank all of you viewers for watching. And we will see you on the next episode of Pizza Talk. And hopefully we'll get you guys back for more master classes in Detroit style technique, and then maybe show us some of the new developments, some of the new concepts you've come up with over the last few years as you've gone from the classics to sort of your personal versions. So, okay, so guys, Jeff Smokovich, Sean Randazzo, Terry, thank you all for being with us, and we'll see you all next time.